Hello everyone, my name is Sofia, welcome to my channel. In this video I will show you how to knit this scarf. It is a dense winter scarf that will keep me warm in freezing weather. The size of my finished scarf is 20 cm wide and 175 cm long, excluding the fringe. I knitted it using the waves pattern and I completed 632 rows in total. I'm confident that those who have watched my previous videos have already been able to knit a scarf on their own. In this video, I will briefly summarize all the information from those videos in one place. To start, I'll talk about the yarn I'm using. This is Lana Gatto Merinocot. Composition 53% merino wool and 47 cotton. If you want to knit a warm woolen scarf, choose yarn with merino wool. Merino wool is the softest and doesn't irritate the skin. My yarn color is 14596 and each 50 gram skein contains 125 meters of yarn. For knitting the scarf, the swatch and adding fringe to the edges, I used exactly 6 skeins of yarn. I will also use long 3.5 mm knitting needles. You also can use long straight needles or circular needles with the length of 60 cm or more. To attach the fringe, I'll also need a 3 mm crochet hook. Before starting the knitting, I made a swatch. I've recorded a separate detailed video on how to calculate the number of stitches based on the swatch. For now, I'll quickly recap the calculations. I knitted the swatch by casting on 21 stitches. Next to this, I write down the width of the swatch in centimeters that I measured. It's 7.5 centimeters. Below this number, I'll write the desired width of the finished item. For me, it's 20 centimeters. In the remaining corner of the square, I'll write X. This is the number of stitches we need to calculate. Now I will calculate the ratio. In this case, I multiply 21 stitches by the desired width of 20 centimeters and divide by the swatch width of 7.5 centimeters. As a result, I get 56 stitches. This is the number of stitches needed for knitting the scarf. In this example, I knitted the swatch using the waves pattern. For this pattern, you need to cast on an odd number of stitches. Often, when calculating stitches, knitters round the number to the nearest one that suits the pattern. In this case, I can cast on either 55 stitches or 57 stitches. I decided to cast on 55 stitches. So I need to cast on 55 stitches. To start, I'll measure a point on the yarn where I'll begin casting on. The yarn tail should be about 2.5 times longer than the intended row width. In my case, that's 20 multiplied by 2.5, which equals 50 centimeters. Here is the marked point. I begin casting on stitches using 2 needles. In my right hand, I hold the tail going to the yarn's end. To maintain even tension, I wrap the free end around my pinky. Place the yarn over my index finger and wrap it around my thumb. I insert the needles under the thumb loop from bottom to top. Hook the yarn from the index finger, pull it through the thumb loop, and tighten the stitch. Let me show you again. If you need a more detailed guide on casting on, you can check out my separate video, linked in the top right corner of the screen. I'll continue casting on 55 stitches. Once the stitches are casted on, holding one needle with my left hand, I carefully remove the second needle with my right hand. I ensure no stitches slip off. I turn the work so that the sharp tip of the needle with stitches points to the right. I hold the free needle in my right hand. I wrap the working yarn around my pinky to control tension. The scarf is knitted in back and forth rows. To create a neat edge, we'll slip the first stitch in every row without knitting it. Next, we work on the pattern. I knit the first stitch on the pattern as a plain knit stitch, like this. Then I insert the needle between the next 2 stitches, grab the working yarn and pull a loop through. A loop now on the right needle. Then I insert the needle into those 2 stitches and knit them together as one knit stitch, like this. Let me show you again. I'll continue knitting like this till the end of the row, except for the last stitch. I've knitted all the stitches from the left needle except for the last one. To create a neat edge, always purl the last stitch of the row, like this. That completes the first row. I turn the work so that the sharp tip of the needle with stitches points to the right. In this pattern, all rows are knitted the same way. In the top right corner, you'll find links to more detailed videos on how to knit basic knit and purl stitches, as well as detailed guide on knitting the waves pattern. Since we are knitting a scarf, you may eventually need to join two strands of yarn. Simply tying them in a knot won't work, as the ends will stick out and are hard to hide. I'll show you my method for joining yarn in projects with two right sides. In my opinion, it is the strongest knot and is least visible in patterns. I'll demonstrate using yarn in different colors for clarity. I lay the two strands parallel and hold them with my thumb and index finger, like this. I take the long end of the bottom yarn and start wrapping it around my thumb, capturing the short ends. I make two wraps. Then I thread the yarn between my thumb and index finger. I place the yarn over index finger and hold it with my middle finger. Now the short ends are threaded through the loops on my thumb. I tighten the loops by pulling the strand held with my middle finger. While doing this, I keep my thumb and index finger tightly together. Look, I pull and knot is tight. Then I carefully cut the protruding short ends close to the knot. Now I am pulling with all my strength and the knot stays secure. I'll warn you, it's best to avoid placing this knot at the edge of your work. It's better to leave it within the fabric. At the end of this video, I'll show you how this knot looks at the edge and within the fabric. I've already used 5 skeins of yarn. I want to add fringe to the scarf's ends. Since the 6th skein is my last, I'll first measure out the yarn needed for the fringe. Whatever remains will be used to finish the scarf. I plan to attach 2 strands of yarn to every second edge stitch. To calculate the required number of yarn strands for the fringe, I'll subtract 1 from the number of cast-on stitches, divide the result by 2, add 1 and then multiply by 2. In my case, it's 55 minus 1, which equals 54. Divide 54 by 2 to get 27, add 1 to make 28, and then multiply 28 by 2, which equals 56. So I'll need 56 strands of yarn for 1 inch of scarf. Since there are 2 edges, I'll double that to 112. I've prepared this piece of cardboard. It measures 10 centimeters in height, which is how long I want the fringe to be. You can make yours longer or shorter as you prefer. Note that I made a small notch at the bottom to secure the yarn end. Now I'll wrap the yarn around the cardboard 112 times. Done. I've wrapped the yarn 112 times around the cardboard, even adding a few extra loops just in case I miscounted. I cut the yarn from the skein and secure the end in the notch. I'll use the remaining yarn from the skein to finish knitting the scarf. My yarn is almost used up. I need to bind off the stitches to finish the project. To ensure I have enough yarn for this, the remaining yarn tail should be at least 7 times the row width. I have slightly more, but it's not enough to knit another row and then bind off, so I'll start binding off now. I slip the first stitch without knitting. Then I knit the next stitch. With 2 stitches on the right needle, I use the left needle to lift the first stitch over the second, using my right index finger for help. I'll show it again and continue this process to the end of the row. Okay, now I'm left with 1 stitch on the left needle. I work it the same way as the others. Finally, only 1 stitch remains on the right needle. I transfer it back to the left needle, knit it, and then pull the yarn tail completely through the stitch, tightening it. Now, before adding the fringe, I'll hand wash the scarf using special liquid detergent for wool. I'll dry it flat to maintain its shape and size. Please remember, hanging knitted items on a drying rack or hangers can cause them to stretch and distort. Notice I won't cut the yarn just yet. My scarf is washed and dry. Time to add the fringe. I take the cardboard with the wrapped yarn. I'll cut the strands on one side and one side only to get uniform lengths. The cardboard was left for several days, leaving a crease in the middle of each strand, which will help when attaching the fringe to the scarf. I'll start attaching fringe from the bound-off edge, positioning the yarn tail to the left. I'll use a 3mm crochet hook to attach the fringe. I insert the hook under the first edge stitch, grab 2 yarn pieces at the midpoint and pull them through the scarf stitch. Then I use the hook to pull the strand ends through the loop and tighten the knot securely. I attach fringe to every other edge stitch and continue to the row's end. Be careful not to start attaching fringe along the side of the scarf by mistake. Once I've added fringe to the edge, I trim the excess yarn tail to match the fringe. Then I'll add fringe to the other edge similarly. To locate the stitches from the cast-on edge, place the yarn tail on the left and look for the chain-like edge stitches. My scarf is now completed. I intentionally left a yarn knot at the edge to show that while visible, it blends in well. The other knots within the scarf are entirely unnoticeable. And that's it for today. In the next video, I'll show you how to knit a matching beret for this scarf. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!